Hey everybody, how's it going? So today I'm going to be ranking all of the main Star Wars TV shows that I've seen. So I just want to go over two things just before we dive into my list. One, I will be sharing some spoilers, so just be aware. I will be discussing various details of the different shows. So if you haven't seen some of these, you can just kind of skip around to the shows you have seen, or maybe you could just come back to my video once you've seen the shows. I just don't want anyone to have anything spoiled. But of course, if you've seen all these shows, then you should be golden. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing, I want to explain as I rank these shows, I'll also rate them on, give them a star rating, 0 through 10. So I want to explain my rating system. So here is my rating system. This is what I've used, in some of my previous videos for movies, and now here I'm going to use the exact same scale for TV shows. Most of this should be self-explanatory, but I'll go ahead and explain a few things. My rating of a 0, like 0 stars out of 10. That just means it's among the worst TV shows or movies I've ever seen, not necessarily the worst ever. And then same thing for 10-star rating, the best. That just means it's among, the best movies or TV shows I've seen, not necessarily number one best overall, right? Ever. And then in the middle section, I have mediocre and average for 4 and 5 stars. I know for some people those terms are synonymous, but here what I mean with average is I just mean right down the middle, a neutral connotation. And then for mediocre, it's more of, slightly below average, a, slightly negative connotation. But other than that, I think this rating system should, everything else should make sense already. So there you have it, those two things. Now let's go ahead and dive into my list. All right, so coming in 11th and final place, I have Star Wars: The Acolyte. I imagine this pick doesn't surprise a lot of people. But just to kind of just go over my general thoughts. I mean, this is a really bad Star Wars show. I'm giving it 1 star. And really the only reason I'm not giving it 0 is just because there's a handful of elements about the show that I like. I mean, credit to, the people who did the costumes. They all look good. And visually, there's some nice locations and stuff. And overall, visually, it's a very good-looking show. And there's some cool lightsaber choreography, and some martial arts choreography. And a handful of things, handful of characters who do a few cool things and have some cool potential, But I mean, other than that, and a few other things, I mean, this show is absolutely abysmal, just, just really awful. And this really is a shame because I think I really liked, coming into the show, I really liked that we were going to get to explore a new era of Star Wars, that we were going to kind of go to this High Republic era, which I know, they started recently building out with some, comic books and some novels and stuff, but this is the first time we've, really dived into this era on screen, right? In either, a TV show or movie format, it's never really been explored at all. So that was a really cool premise to see, a lot of Star Wars in a different era. I love the kind of, era of the Clone Wars and, the Empire and the Rebellion and, then also getting into the New Republic with shows with the Mandalorian and stuff. But it was really nice to explore a totally different era of Star Wars. But the problem is they just told a really terrible story in this era, in my opinion. Just so much that just went wrong with this show, in my opinion. I mean, the characters for the most part suck. The story is just horrible, with just tons of predictable stuff. It's supposed to be this mystery, but it's totally obvious the whole time, pretty much everything, who the Sith Lord is and a lot of what really happened, on Brendock and all this kind of stuff. They're supposed to come off as these big reveals, but they really aren't. And then a lot of characters who are just really annoying, aren't interesting, bad character development, arcs that make no sense, motivations, people whose motivations flip back and forth all the time. So it's hard to actually kind of get behind a lot of these people and what they want, what they're striving for, because it flip-flops so much, just unpredictably and just totally unrealistically for how human beings act. And then also just a really messed up sense of morality in the show too, where it's the show seems to be trying to get us to like people who are bad and dislike people who are good. So, I mean, quick example, the most obvious example would be okay, Jedi Master Soul, who, I think, was a flawed, is a flawed person, right? But all of us, we make mistakes. But a guy who gets kind of portrayed as somehow just totally evil and messed up by the end of the show for his role, and I guess just in the whole kind of situation that happened on Brendock, right? But specifically revolving around killing Osha and May's mother. But I mean, from the situation we saw with our own eyes, what happened, it really seems quite justifiable, right? I mean, he's in the heat of the moment. He's trying to do what he thinks is the right thing and save these two girls, right? And their mother is, like turning into like this like mist kind of ghost thing, like very like looking very scary and dangerous, right? And he has to make a split second quick decision. As also like I think it was May, but Soul thought it was Osha who was also turning into the mist, and this is kind of stuff he hasn't seen before. He doesn't really know what's happening, and it just is like, okay, this is quickly going on. He doesn't know, is the mother about to try and kill him? Is the kid about to die? And split second decision he has to make, and he kills her, out of protecting himself, protecting the kid, protecting Torben who's with him, and just trying to quickly make the right call. Because I mean, what if he hadn't and she killed him, killed Torben, killed the kid? I mean, again, I mean, it's easy hindsight. It's vision's 2020, right? But in the moment, I mean, I think what he did is justifiable. I mean, we can certainly have a discussion about it. If you feel differently, please let me know in the comments. I totally, I'm open-minded about it, as I try to be with everything, but I think you can easily defend what he did in the moment. Yet it's made out like he's some evil, like, person who did this horrible, like, cruel thing to the point where Osha goes ahead and, like, chokes him to death over it. It just seems so wrong and messed up to me. And I think, based on what I've seen online, I think a lot of people agree with me. And then on the other end, you have someone like May, who's done horrible things, right? I mean, as a kid, she goes off and she, tries to kill Osha, like, burns the whole place down in, like, this kind of fit of rage, and was egged on by one of her mothers to do it. Great role model, right? And, you know, and then once she's an adult, she goes on this, revenge quest to go murder all these Jedi, and she goes around the galaxy and is, hurting and killing, innocent people, right? And causing all this chaos, right? And then, so how do you, she does all this evil stuff, right before our eyes. Remember, this isn't stuff like this, in question. We see it happen, right? And then, at the end of the show, it's we're supposed to believe that she's, somehow this victim, and that she's, we're supposed to like her or something. I mean, it just makes no sense at all. And then Osha herself, her whole arc is basically, turning to the dark side, It just, none of it really makes any sense to me at all. And I know it's a modern thing, I think in modern screen arts, right, and TV shows, movies, and other, stuff, it's much more common nowadays than it was in the past to, have the main characters be the bad guys, So to follow, the evil people who aren't good, right? To have them be the center of the show, to have us follow them. I mean, quick examples. I mean, like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, right? We're following people who aren't good people in those shows, right? But the difference with those shows is those shows are written very well, for starters, right? But also, the key there is the show's not trying to convince you that they're good. I mean, they're showing you these people, and you're supposed to feel that they're bad, They're showing you that, and it's not trying to convince you otherwise or make them out to be some kind of heroes. Whereas here, it's trying to make them, seem good. I mean, that's at least how it comes off to me. I mean, let me know if you feel different in the comments, but that's how it comes off to me. And it just seems so messed up to me. You're watching the show, and it's trying to convince you of this messed up sense of morality that it just doesn't make sense, So I mean, I could go on and on about how bad so many aspects of this were, everything I've talked about so far. And then also, I mean, underuse of really cool characters too. I mean, like Kelnaka seems like a really cool character. He could have been a cool character anyways, they could have done some more with him, but he really does nothing. I mean, and that's another thing that makes no sense too. Why is May so out for revenge on everybody? I mean, especially someone like Kelnaka. What did he even do? I mean, Soul, I guess, was the one most directly involved with being combative in the whole situation that unfolded on Brendock. But what did Kelnaka do? I mean, Kelnaka was just there kind of as a part of the team. He wasn't the leader or anything. And the witches took him over, possessed his mind, and had him fight, his fellow Jedi, right? What did that guy do that, warranted May, going on this revenge quest to go murder him? It just makes no sense. Again, like I said, so much of the show just does not make sense at all. And then also little things too, like how did like this facility on Brendock that's mostly made up of like concrete and then like I don't know, like solid metal like door frames, how did this just like catch on fire so easily? This makes no sense. Or like the space fire early on in the show, like a fire on the outside of a ship, like you know. So little things like that, all the way to like huge things like just the writing and the characters and the story. This show is just totally screwed up, and like I said, 1 star from me, awful. Dead last easily on my list. Wish I could say more. Not trying to, I don't like to have to like be so negative about some of this stuff, but that's just how the show is, and you know, unfortunately, very bad and well deserving, I think, of the last place spot on this list. Now, moving on to 10th place, I have the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Um, definitely I think a step up from the Acolyte, but it's still another huge disappointment of a show. So I'm giving this 3 stars. I think it's a poor show overall. And there's a lot of reasons why this show, is bad in my opinion, but I guess really the main reason is just because of Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. And the problem is they just didn't get his character right really until the end of the show, in my opinion. It makes sense that he's like, depressed and in a bad state in his life right after, the vast majority of the Jedi Order has been slaughtered and he's, living alone in kind of isolation on Tatooine. And I can totally understand how that would drive someone insane. And, I can totally understand how that has him in a very poor mental state, right? I get that. But the idea that someone is like, strong willed and committed to, good and defending, Luke Skywalker as he grows up and all these other things, it just doesn't make sense to me that he would have become so lost to the point where like he could barely even use the Force anymore and got destroyed by Darth Vader in a fight, and they just took it too far. They made it too extreme. It just doesn't make sense to me that he fell so far. I just don't buy it. It makes 0 sense to me. But later on the show, he finally at the end is able to have his big fight with Vader, and at the end, right, because the fight in the middle was just stupid in my opinion, but the fight at the end was good. Where they have a good back and forth fight, but Obi-Wan gets the upper hand and wins. As I recall, obviously I saw the show back when it came out a couple years ago. But just took too long to get there, and really just didn't do much for the overall story. A lot of dumb, silly things. Like we could talk on and on about like like Obi-Wan like hiding Leia under his like coat as they walked out of like the Fortress Inquisitorius. Like as if no one would notice that there's like this kid hiding under your like jacket, why are there 4 legs, under your vest? It just silly, stupid things like that just make the show just look cheap and silly. Like no one actually proof watched it or anything, and then just, I don't know, overall, like no really, not many interesting side characters that are introduced, to like elevate the show. Ewan McGregor's solid, as always. Love him as Obi-Wan. You got cool characters on the side. You got Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, played by Joel Edgerton and Bonnie Peace. I believe that's how you say her last name. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Bonnie Peace. Both of them are great. I love both of them. I think they're both, great as these characters. They do a great job playing them. I love them, but they kind of had a limited role, as I recall, until really like the last episode, especially for, Aunt Beru. So I love those characters. They're awesome, played by 2 awesome people, who seem like awesome people in real life, who are really great at what they do, great at acting, but they were kind of a small part of the show. So, having them kind of sidelined, I think was kind of a mistake. They should have been brought into the story more. I would have preferred that they had a bigger, role in this show. And then also Bail Organa, of course, is great. I love Bail. He's a great dad and a great kind of like figure for building up the rebellion. He's just a good guy. And Jimmy Smits, who plays him, is great. I believe that's how you say his name. Just for the record, I am, for the most part, pretty bad about pronunciation. But of course, I don't want to be insulting. I'm trying to get everybody right, but please forgive me if I mispronounce anybody's names. So Jimmy Smits does, a phenomenal job playing Bail Organa. I love him. And then young Leia Organa, I think, is great in the show. The girl who plays her, I don't know her name, but she does a great job playing a young Leia. Fantastic job. Very impressed with what she was able to do. But again, the story just wasn't here, to really do anything. Like I said, I don't know. The whole story here just kind of doesn't really get us anywhere. It kind of basically it builds Obi-Wan out of his kind of rut back into being the Obi-Wan we know. But again, it's kind of a rut that I think was way too deep. It shouldn't have been that extreme. So the whole premise of the show just seems kind of like, okay, getting him out of this funk that never should have been so extreme to begin with. Again, I understand, like, this is a low point for Obi-Wan for sure. I get it. But I just think they took it to too much of an extreme. It just makes no sense, And I don't know. I mean, other than that, I mean, there's just not much to this show. I think it would have been much better if they incorporated some other elements, like bringing Maul into here. I'll get to maybe some of this more when I talk about Rebels, but I think Maul could have been brought into this show. They could have done some other things to make it more exciting, more interesting, bring in some more interesting side characters. And the Inquisitors are another kind of, I'm not really into the Inquisitors. Most of them are uninteresting. The Grand Inquisitor is pretty cool, but like other than that, most of the Inquisitors aren't interesting characters. They're not really formidable in combat. I mean, as they shouldn't be. I mean, they're not trained very well. I'm not saying they should be like OP or something like that. They shouldn't be overly powerful, but by being less powerful and kind of just annoying characters, like annoying people, they're just uninteresting. I don't really like seeing them unless it's like them getting like wiped out in a fight against a Jedi, or somebody else. So they're lame and don't really interest me at all. And like I said, a lot of the side characters here aren't interesting. And flashback scene of Obi-Wan and Anakin back kind of like more like Attack of the Clones era. At least based on, like their attire, kind of how they were dressed. That was cool, but that was just small, there wasn't much. So it's not enough to elevate this into being a really good show. So overall, 3 stars for me. Poor show overall, unfortunately. I'm, very disappointed by the show, but at least there's a few things here, and it's certainly a step above the Acolyte. So anyways, 10th place here for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. 3 stars. Poor show overall, but, at least a few things here and there to enjoy. Don't know if there's going to be a second season. Same thing with the Acolyte. Both of them, that's why I have, that's why I have the question marks here, just because, it's been kind of rumored, maybe they will have a second season, maybe they won't. We don't know. So we'll see. I wouldn't be opposed to extra seasons for them, but I would much prefer other shows to get more seasons first, of course. I'd love to see the Clone Wars get continued. I'd love to see other shows get stuff long before these do, especially the Acolyte. But, I mean, if you got the right people in there to do them well, then I think, then I'd be interested, if you could get them to be very different, especially with the Acolyte. But for both of these, to get, I guess, to change it up and, make significant improvements, right? So significantly improved second seasons, I'd be down for that. So anyways, without further ado, let's move on to the next show. And in 9th place, I have Star Wars Ahsoka. And I'm giving this 4 stars. Another step above, right? We're taking another step up. This show is better than Obi-Wan, in my opinion. Certainly better than the Acolyte. But I think it's just clearly inferior to Rebels, because this is sort of like a pseudo 5th season of Rebels, just in live action, and it certainly isn't as good as Rebels, in my opinion. I guess, let's see. A lot of the problems with this, I'm going to say Ahsoka is a huge problem for me, because she's just kind of a flat, boring character for the most part here. Rosario Dawson, I just think, she does a good job playing Ahsoka. I think she's a really good actress, but it's just hard to change from Ashley, Eckstein. God, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. I'm probably not. But she is absolutely awesome. She just, Ahsoka Tano is one of the best characters in all of Star Wars, period, for me. And Ashley Eckstein does just a wonderful job playing her, and, brought her to life throughout the Clone Wars. And she's a character we get to see grow and develop and have a wonderful character arc, throughout the Clone Wars, then in Rebels, then now, then Mandalorian, Ahsoka. And she's a great character. And that's Ashley Eckstein's character to me. And I know for live action, they decided to cast someone else. I don't know exactly what the reasoning was, but I'm assuming it had to do with just physical, like, look. I don't know if it was like, Ahsoka's height or proportions or what it was. But I guess they just felt like Rosario Dawson physically could play her better than Ashley Eckstein. I don't know the full reasoning, but it just doesn't feel like Ahsoka to me. It feels like like a semblance of Ahsoka, but it just doesn't feel like Ahsoka. She's too flat and kind of bored, and she's not like, Ahsoka in the Clone Wars and even in Rebels. She's silly. She has fun. She's energetic. Of course, some of her flaws come from that too. She's headstrong, especially early on, and can be reckless and a little careless, but she's a really good person with a good heart. who's energetic and kind of exciting to be around, and much more like, I guess, like I said, more like has more emotions and like passion than most Jedi do, And in some ways those are flaws, but in a lot of ways those are good things and allows her to, see a lot of things the Jedi are kind of blinded by. So she's a really great character. And I just it doesn't feel fully like Ahsoka to me in The Mandalorian or in the Ahsoka show. Like especially in The Mandalorian, where she just jumps Mando out of nowhere in the forest. Like, what if she killed the guy? What if he didn't put up his like block soon enough and she just sliced the dude in half? That doesn't seem like an Ahsoka thing. That seems like she would approach the guy and be careful, and make sure not to like, leave herself, vulnerable. But it just seems so silly to me that she would just, you know, like just jump the guy when she doesn't even like know who this guy is, and he turns out to be, an ally, right? So, just a whole lot of problems. But let me go over some positive things before I go back to some more of the negative, right? I really like seeing, Governor Ryder Azadi. Clancy Brown voices, Ryder Azadi in the Rebels show, and they brought him, to play him live action. Clancy Brown, I mean, he's a legend, Mr. Krabs, and of course, tons of stuff in Star Wars, like Savage Opress and tons of other characters, but of course, Ryder Azadi in Rebels, and now here live in, live action in Ahsoka. Like that I liked having him here. He's really cool, but of course, that was a small role. Other characters, of course, Thrawn. Love having Thrawn here. Thrawn's great as a character. Lars Mikkelsen, just, man, his voice is just, I mean, wonderful for Thrawn. Just the kind of menacing, calculated, intelligent, strategic villain, driven by logic and, strategy, and art. He's just great and does a great job playing him here. But I will say, I just don't think Thrawn really had enough to do here. He kind of stood around too much, just kind of managing battles and then just retreating. So they didn't really give him a lot to do here, which was kind of disappointing. But of course, Lars Mikkelsen spot on. Definitely the right choice to bring him into live action. So glad they didn't, mess that up by trying to recast him. That would have been horrible. And then Huang, the like the droid who has been training Jedi younglings on their like passage to like, get their kyber crystals and make their lightsabers, who's been doing it, for I mean, what, at least 1,000 years? At least as long as Yoda's been around, we know, as confirmed in the Clone Wars, right? So really cool to see him in live action now. Clone Wars character. Love seeing Clone Wars characters brought into live action the right way, at least, if they're going to do cool things with them, right? So really cool to have Huang here. Enjoyed that. Then let's look at some of the other side characters. Sabine, I just find really annoying here. She was kind of annoying to me in Rebels too, to be honest. She's not my favorite character, but I thought she was better there. Obviously had more time to develop her and everything, but here she's just a really kind of annoying character. And a lot of her like decisions and stuff don't necessarily sit too well with me. Her decision to give up the orb thing to Balin, in order to go and have a chance at seeing Ezra again. I get it. You got like, a friend you really care about, but okay, I mean, based on what Thrawn, the threat Thrawn poses to the galaxy, I mean, you could have put the entire galaxy in jeopardy. I mean, you could be talking about trillions of people, whose lives you put at risk by doing that, So it's a very questionable decision to say the least, So question that, and just also the fact that throughout most of the show, she's just kind of, I don't know, I just find her kind of irritating. And then after all that, the whole decision she makes, right, like all basically for Ezra, right, she shows up and like it's like the most unenthusiastic, like bored, uninterested like reunion ever between her and Ezra after like 10 years or something like that. Maybe more, maybe less. I'm not sure about that figure, right? But a long time, right? Many, many years, right? Of Ezra being stranded in this other galaxy. They're not sure if they're ever going to see each other. And they're like, kind of like, hey, what's up? How's it going? It's just, mind-boggling, just mind-boggling, just stupid. So, just a lot of mess-ups like that. And then you have Balin Skoll and Shin Hati, who are interesting characters to me with potential, but they don't really do much in this season. You have some cool duels and stuff like that, but overall, they don't really get enough development here. Ray Stevenson, rest in peace to him. He's a great actor. He has a really commanding presence in the show. I think you could argue he's the best, actor in this entire show, right? I mean, very commanding presence, great Great actor, and just from what I've seen, just seems like he was a great human being, wonderful guy. So rest in peace to him, of course. Um, and then Shin Hattie, I think also is a character who has potential. But again, they just don't do a lot in the season. And then Shin ends up kind of out on her own because Balin kind of just like ditches her and says like, oh, he has his different path and he's following all this kind of stuff he kind of senses in the Force, and there's a lot of predictions about what it is, but it seems to have connections to the ones, to the father, the son, and the daughter, from the Clone Wars. So I like that connection. I like that they're exploring that and that they could be brought in. I would love to see that. But again, that's all kind of stuff in the future moving forward, where unfortunately Ray Stevenson won't be able to play him anymore. But that's setting up for the future some cool stuff. But right here, there's just not as much. There's cool stuff here, but just not enough to really, elevate the show as much as it kind of, it needs it, for this first season anyways. And then Shin Hattie, again, the same thing, now she's kind of out on her own. It's like, okay, what's she going to do? Could be interesting to see. But again, that's setting up for another season, which hopefully that season will be awesome, right? But here, there's not as much. So these are two characters who I like, but I feel like we need to see more of them, So I feel like a lot of what this season is just setting them up for the future. So we'll see how that goes, see how that unfolds. Then another thing, I think, bringing in Ahsoka and Anakin in the world between worlds, it's cool to see. Visually looks great. Like seeing some live action Clone Wars stuff, but all that is just kind of like stuff on the screen, right? I love the Clone Wars. I want to see it in live action, but I want to see it in the right way. And here, this episode felt like a total nothing. It was supposed to be this kind of like lesson for Ahsoka, to kind of go on this journey and have like this Anakin. We don't even know what if this was like a Force ghost of Anakin or like a vision of Anakin, or like what was he like actually a Force ghost, or was it like a manifestation of Ahsoka's mind? Was it a vision? I mean, we don't really know what he is, in the scene, and what he teaches her just seems like what she just decides at the end like she wants to live or something like that. Is from what I recall, it just doesn't seem like, I don't really get what the message is there. It's not really a clear like message of what she's learning. All the while she's like unconscious underwater, which like, okay, like how is she there for like, how long was she there? Hours? I mean, how did she survive this? Was she transported to the world between worlds? Was it all in her mind? There's so many things that just don't make sense about it. And so I find myself sitting here with more questions than actually just sitting there enjoying like a Clone Wars nostalgia trip. But again, Clone Wars nostalgia stuff needs to be done for a purpose. I want to see that, but I want to see it, with purpose. I want to see it in an interesting story with interesting. We obviously got the characters here, Anakin and Ahsoka. I mean, come on, two of the best characters in Clone Wars, Anakin and Ahsoka. But you got to do something interesting with them. And here, this just wasn't really that interesting to me, So, anyways, and then Morgan Elsbeth, just lame, uninteresting, boring villain to me that I just do not care about at all. Only thing interesting about her was when Ahsoka killed her at the end. And that's too bad because I know the woman who plays her, Deanna Lee Inosanto, hope I'm pronouncing that right. She seems like such a wonderful, awesome person in real life who's so passionate about Star Wars and goes to conventions, and she seems awesome. And I've heard she's a mixed martial artist in real life with actually connections to Bruce Lee. I think she's like maybe his, I think she might be like his goddaughter or something like that. Don't trust me fully on that one. I might be wrong about that, but I know she has some kind of connections to Bruce Lee, and she's a martial artist, and she can, act really well in like, fights. She looks fantastic, and I think she seems like a really skilled actress, and like I said, just seems like an awesome human being, but just this character is just boring to me. The writing isn't there. I just find her so... I'll get into a little more whenever I go over Tales of the Empire, but she's just such an uninteresting, boring villain that I just do not care about in the slightest. So that just brings the show down, Probably not much more to say. Overall, Ahsoka, again, some interesting things. I like having Thrawn here in live action. Hope he does more next season. Same thing for Balin and Shin. Like them. Hope they do more next season. Morgan Elsbeth's out of the picture now. Good. And the Ahsoka thing probably won't really be fixed unless they significantly change how they have Rosario Dawson like play her, So I'm not really optimistic about that. And then Sabine and Ezra, we'll see. I think the second season should hopefully be better as long as the writing is there. Because I think we're going to see some more interesting things with Thrawn and Balin and Shin and some of the others. But as far as like Ahsoka and some of the other characters go, I'm not too optimistic. But we'll see. So anyways, 9th place here for this show. Uh, 4 stars. It's a mediocre show to me, but at least there's some cool things here. All right, so now moving on to 8th place, I have Star Wars Tales of the Empire. And I'm giving this 4 stars as well, but I'm giving it a slight nod, above Ahsoka. I think it's slightly better. I'll get into that in just a bit. Let's go over the bad first. Morgan Elsbeth. Again, I just got done saying lame, uninteresting character to me that I do not care about. So having half the episodes here focused on her, yeah, not, the best choice in my opinion. These are very limited, series, right? And to pick such a boring character to me, just bad choice. Her arc just is so, just, I don't know. It's almost like just, I don't know, depressing to watch. I mean, she's this person who goes from having this horrible thing happen to her, right? Like General Grievous leading, an army of separatist droids, right? Leading a separatist army, go in there and wipe out her, like, Night Sister clan, right? Grievous kills her mother right in front of her. And all this, horrible stuff around her. She sees her people slaughtered, like everything she knows, destroyed and burned. And that drives her to become just like General Grievous, and the evil people invaded her home and become an evil person herself and oppress the people under her. And literally, like symbolically, I saw this somewhere. I believe, I don't know if it was, I think it was maybe an article I was reading online talking about Tales of the Empire. Literally, like the droid army burns down like the forest, like around her home on Dathomir. Like literally, they burn it down, and then later we see her in her 3rd episode in Tales of the Empire. We see her burn down the forest out there. Like symbolically, you see, like literally her home was burned. Now she's burning the home of these people, right? So she becomes the very thing that like destroyed and ruined her like life earlier on. It's just such a depressing story to see. I mean, the fact that she just goes from having this horrible thing happen to her to just becoming the very evil that caused her that suffering, right? So just not a story I like or enjoy at all. Just depressing to see her become so evil. I mean, not much else to say about her story. There's at least a few things here I do like. I like General Grievous. I mean, they made him menacing and, come off as very intimidating and evil, leading the droid army. I mean, beautiful, gorgeous animation. I mean, throughout the whole thing, but especially Grievous. He looks fantastic. So great job with Grievous, with the way they made him look. So Grievous looks fantastic. Love him. And his laugh, haunting. I love it, the way they made it. Just echoing kind of, obviously for real throughout the forest, and also like in Morgan's mind. Oh my God, it's great. They did a great job with that. And then, Thrawn's here. Thrawn's cool, but he didn't really do anything, so not really too much to say there. But the best aspect of the Morgan Elsbeth part of Tales of the Empire is definitely Ambassador Nadura. She is just absolutely fantastic. Really interesting character that I come to like love in just the few minutes we get to see of her. We briefly see her kind of just standing amongst the people in the 2nd episode, but in the 3rd episode, she actually plays a key role. She left the area, I guess, during the era of the Empire, right? She left the planet, left that whole like kingdom that Morgan Elsbeth rules over, right? And then she ends up joining the New Republic. She's an ambassador for them, or something like that. And she ends up coming back, to try and get the planet to join the New Republic, and also to bring Morgan Elsbeth to justice. Right? Great. It's awesome. Except big problem. She decides to show up with just 5 freaking dudes with her as her security detail. I mean, how laughable is that? You're literally going there to place someone under arrest, like controls this like kingdom with like armed people and droids and stuff. Granted, yes, it did get like worse while she was gone. Like there are more people. They say that in the episode, but still, there's like armed people there, and Morgan Elsbeth, and she's committed all these like atrocious war crimes. Why the hell would you show up there with this puny little group of people to make such a like big arrest? Are you kidding me? How stupid is that? Makes no sense. So of course, when Morgan Elsbeth, big surprise, refuses to turn herself in, she's evil. You know that. She's not just gonna walk away after this whole thing, and you show up there with like your puny little army. It's just so absurdly stupid. It makes no sense, right? And Nadura is a really smart person. She would know better. And the New Republic, it seems to have decent resources. Like, it just makes no sense. So, of course, they ensue and have a fight. And, Nadura's like New Republic guards are able to do some damage. They kill some of like I don't know if they killed any like the is that like Morgan Elsbeth's she has some droids and then she also has some like like living beings too, like in like these suits. We don't know like what species they are, if they're humans or some other alien species, or we don't know. But they managed to kill at least a few droids and or like people, right, working for Morgan Elsbeth, and you can kind of see that in the Mandalorian, right? Because the Mandalorian episode with Morgan Elsbeth takes place after this, and you can see that her army is a little bit smaller. So I like that. I like that that's consistent, right? That's cool. But overall, it's like, okay, so Nadura's like guards, after doing a little bit of damage, are all wiped out and killed, and she's not able to escape, and she dies tragically. She's such a great person who's coming here to try and help the people and bring someone to justice. She's a great person, wonderful person who died doing something heroic. So I mean, hats off to her. She's awesome, right? And also, rest in peace to her and her guards, right? They were all there to do a good thing, right? And it's sad they died, but it's also just like this could have been planned so much better, I mean, who sent them there like this? Who was their supervisor? Who thought this was a good idea? How about this? You want to go and arrest this person. Show up with like 100+ freaking people, surround the place, have like be armed to the teeth, have like not just one ship, maybe multiple ships, whatever you can spare, and show up and like make an order. Like, okay, Morgan, come out, all of you with your hands up, drop all your weapons, and come, face, our justice system for all the horrible crimes you've committed. And if you don't want to do that, then we're gonna come in there and we're gonna take you in by force. And if necessary, we'll kill you. Okay? Like it'd be so simple, right? Go in there, conduct a proper arrest of this person, right? Just so simple. Show up with the people. Hopefully they come in quietly once they see that you have the proper force, right? But she sees this just 5 freaking guards. Okay, she's gonna kill them, So you have to be able to enforce justice, So show up with your massive army. Hopefully they come quietly. And if they don't, then okay, unfortunately you're gonna have to go in there. But it's a last resort, but you gotta do it, right? Go in there and, take her and her guards out and free the innocent people inside who've been suffering, right? So, and then afterwards, right, she gets off like this, like she tries. I don't know if she actually got the distress call off. I'm thinking she did, right? It was actually Bo-Katan on the other end. That's not something I noticed when I was originally watching this, right? But like for the first time. But when I rewatched it recently, while kind of making up my ranking ratings here for this video, right, just kind of reviewing stuff to finalize, where I wanted to rank all these shows and how I wanted to rate them, right? I went back and I watched this and went over it. And I noticed that cool little detail. I like it. But the problem is, okay, she gets this distress call off. And doesn't seem like there's like this kind of like immediate response. Like, okay, so I guess Bo-Katan is the one who tells the Mandalorian in the Mandalorian, right, where Ahsoka is, right? She knows Ahsoka's on this planet at that time. So, it's probably safe to assume she sent her there, told her about this thing. But okay, why just send one person? Why is she just hanging out in the woods and coming up to the place and saying, oh, you have 24 hours to, like, surrender or whatever, reconsider? Like, what? Like, we already know this person's going to kill anyone who tries to, like, arrest them. Like, why are we playing around? Go free these people already, Why do these innocent people have to suffer more? Like, because of, like, you're idiots and you're not going to go and, like, take over the place? It's just so stupid. And then also, like, it probably wasn't Bo-Katan alone who sent, a New Republic ambassador on this mission. Who was, like, their leader? That ambassador with just the 5 measly guards I sent out a little while ago, they never returned from that planet. Maybe I should go check that out. Like, what, no one thought of this? There's no supervisor? No one thought? Just stupid. Nonsensical. Makes no sense, right? So, I think I've gone on about this enough. Nadura's a really cool character. I like her. I like a few aspects of this, but overall, the Morgan Elsbeth story sucks in Tales of the Empire. Now, the Barriss Offee story, great. I really enjoy the Barriss Offee stuff. Definitely has problems, and biggest problem is it feels very incomplete. Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi are short. I get it. I like the short format, but here it just doesn't work as well because it feels like such a massive story to tell for Barriss of, her kind of going under this whole arc and, being, an inquisitor for a brief point, but then realizing she still kind of at her core is a good person and decides, to, obviously break away from that, right, and be a good person. So, I like that. I like her journey, and I like a lot of what she does, but you needed more time. We needed more time to go over this whole story. In the 3rd episode, they hint that, like, she mentions, like, her longtime friend or something who clearly seems like it must be Ahsoka, right? So that implies they had some kind of reunion and made up. Just, keep in mind, she totally screwed over Ahsoka in the Clone Wars. So we don't have any time to like learn, oh, how did that happen? It's just too incomplete, right? So I would have loved to have seen that reunion between Ahsoka and Barriss on screen and see that, fleshed out. So this is by far of the four different stories we see, Dooku, Ahsoka, Morgan, Elsbeth, and Barriss, and like the four, characters that get focused on in Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi. This one by far feels the most incomplete. The other ones feel more like filling in the gaps for other stories, because this feels like a massive saga for Barriss after the Clone Wars that just, 3 little episodes just doesn't cut it. But I still like what I see overall. I think some people turn to the dark side and then like flip back and forth a little too easily. So like Lynn, like who's clearly evil and just not a good person, like turning to the light side at the end is kind of like, okay, I mean, this is the same person like slaughtered a bunch of innocent people, and then they like left some kid in the second episode just on his own in like this abandoned, like destroyed village. Even Ahsoka, I mean, even Barriss left him there. I mean, what the heck? They left this little kid there just like fend for himself until he screwed him over. Like I said, even Barriss did. So like the same person, Lynn, is supposed to like turn to the light side. I mean, I like that she turned to the light side. I'm not gonna complain about someone, doing something good, right? But after so much bad, it just seems kind of silly. And this happens too much in Star Wars, where people like do horrible things and then they become good all of a sudden, or vice versa. Just happens a little too frequently. It just seems a little unrealistic. These people like being good and the bad and the good, and it's just like these too massive of like switches. So, anyways, and that's something that happens. I mean, like, it's done really well, like with like Vader, especially in the original trilogy, right? But something I didn't even mention when I was talking about Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan show, they kind of messed that up with Vader. Vader is, he, in the Obi-Wan show, they show him like so evil, like going through like this village and like hurting like innocent people, like just standing there doing nothing. It's just like, this doesn't seem like Vader to me. He turned evil, but he was never like Sidious. He even acknowledges that in the original trilogy. He was a guy who lost his way for sure and became evil, but not so evil and horrible that like, oh, here's just some random like dude hanging out. Let me go kill this guy and torture him or whatever. Just so that's yet another thing they messed up about the Obi-Wan show. But anyways, back to the point. Barriss kind of suffers from that same thing, where she's like really evil at the end of Clone Wars, does some bad things, and now she's good. And don't get me wrong, I like that they decided to take this path of making her good, not keeping the evil path, right? But she always seemed like a good person to me in the Clone Wars early on. So I like that they made her good and had her have a redemption arc here in Tales of the Jedi, or Tales of the Empire rather, instead of having her be like evil. But it kind of doesn't jive so well with the Clone Wars, right? And I guess that's more of a problem with the Clone Wars. Maybe they shouldn't have made her so evil there. But anyways, I still like her story here. Have fun with it. Tales of the Empire, 4 stars, mediocre, just kind of balancing the Barriss story that I like overall and the Morgan story that I overall don't like. 4 stars, mediocre. 8th place here. All right, so in 7th place, I have Star Wars Rebels, and I'm giving this 7 stars. Huge jump up. This is a very good show. I really enjoy Rebels. Not as good as the Clone Wars, definitely not. But it's still a nice show, and I like the family vibe. You have this crew of people who, have become a family, and you get to follow them throughout the whole series. Just kind of similar to the Bad Batch. Most Star Wars shows aren't kind of like this family doing things together. Bad Batch and Rebels are like that, and I really enjoy that. I like that. And you have some cool things that happen here. Kind of like I alluded to or mentioned earlier, I don't like how Maul and his whole story were finished in Rebels. I like that Maul's included, but him going to Tatooine and facing Obi-Wan and dueling him and dying finally, after being in so much stuff with the Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars, now Rebels, I would have preferred to have seen that played out in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which would have made, I think, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show a lot better and would have been a much more fitting way to end Maul's story in live action with, Ray Park as Darth Maul, and then I guess get Sam Witwer for the voice, and then, have Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. Stephen Stanton, who does, Tarkin and other characters, voiced Obi-Wan here, and I think he does a phenomenal job, of course. But I just would have preferred to have seen this played out in live action. I think that would have been better. And then, I think, that's a problem for me. There's some silliness here I don't like, some annoying characters. Personally, I don't like Chopper. I just find him annoying. He's not funny to me at all. But there's a lot of cool things here. There's some cool lightsaber duels. I particularly like the duel at the end of season 1 between, Kanan. It's Kanan and Ezra versus the Grand Inquisitor, and Ezra gets knocked out early because, of course, at this point he's not very experienced. Then Kanan really kind of finds himself and is able to duel, really well and beat the Grand Inquisitor. And it's a really cool duel. I really enjoy that, and also just good development, character development for Kanan. I like that a lot. And then also just the fact that they're just good people. The Rebels crew. Going like in the beginning of the show, like going to Tarkin Town and giving out free food. People who don't have much. They're just good-hearted people, and it's nice to follow good people doing good things, and I like that. Uh, you know, so even Chopper, who I find very annoying, the whole group, the whole crew, the whole family, they do good things and they're good people, and I like that. So it feels good watching the show. I enjoy it. So despite its flaws and problems and the fact that it's definitely not nearly as good as the Clone Wars, it's still a solid show that I really enjoy. Very good show, 7 stars for me. 7th place. All right, now in 6th place, I have The Book of Boba Fett with 7 stars. To me, yes, I am saying very good show. I know a lot of people will disagree with me here. But to me, first of all, I just think this is basically like The Mandalorian season 2.5, 2.5, right? Which has, a lot of problems, a lot of kind of like disjointed things. Biggest problem, just the fact that it's a Boba Fett show that has 2 entire episodes that like don't have Boba Fett in them. So definitely a problem. Definitely not like, the vision from the beginning, just the overall direction. It's just a bad, this just doesn't work, as well as it should. But there's a lot of fun stuff here, though. A lot of stuff that I really like. Especially, Cad Bane, who's underused, but just awesome in the 6th and 7th episodes here. I love his, like, he does all these, like, standoffs and, like, quick draw battles with people. He does it with Cobb Vanth here in the 6th episode, beats Cobb Vanth. Cobb Vanth's good, right? But not as good as Bane, right? Bane's, legend at it. So awesome to see that, classic kind of Western style standoff. Really cool. Love that. Kind of going back to the Western roots of Star Wars. But Star Wars has a lot of roots in the Western genre, going back to the very beginning, the original trilogy, of course. Think about Han Solo, right? Gunslinger, So I like that a lot. And I like his kind of face off with Boba Fett, So a lot of stuff with Cad Bane's really awesome, a lot of fun. I like seeing Luke Skywalker training Grogu. I think that's cool. I think they did a decent job. I know it's a little funky with like the, how they have to recreate like a young Mark Hamill, but I still think it works well enough here and it's fun. I don't like Grogu's decision to go back, be with Mando. It just doesn't really make sense so quick because the whole point of season 2 of The Mandalorian was to send him back, to find him a Jedi to train him, and they do that and then they just erase that in a separate show. So then The Mandalorian season 3 comes back with Grogu back with Mando. And I get it. He has that personal attachment with Mando. I respect that. I like that. Mando's like his father. I respect that bond. I like that they're attached, and I respect that he wants to be with him. But just story-wise, I don't know. Mando could still like visit and be a part of Grogu's life. That wouldn't necessarily jive with the Jedi Order of old, but this new Jedi Order that Luke is working to establish, it honestly seems like that's something he would kind of pioneer, right? The idea of like, hey, the old Jedi Order had its strengths and it had its weaknesses. Let me go ahead and improve. And Luke seems like the right guy to do that, to actually create a new Jedi Order that's better and doesn't necessarily have to totally shut off attachment, right? You could do it in a manner that doesn't like make you fall to the dark side. So it doesn't really make any sense that like Mando would never be able to associate with Grogu ever again, So I just don't like that whole decision and everything. I feel like there'd be a better balance to allow Grogu to become a Jedi and train with Luke while also still being attached and connected with the Mandalorian and seeing him, But still, this show is fun to me. Cool action. I like seeing Boba Fett be like more of an anti-hero rather than a villain. I agree they should have made him a little more aggressive here. He's too passive, But the guy who plays him, Tamora Morrison, believe that's how you say it. He's awesome. He plays him so well. Yes, they could have made him, again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name. I hope that's how you pronounce it. But look, he's awesome. He plays him well. They should have made him more aggressive and more like dominant like he is, but I do like the route of going with him more of an anti-hero rather than just a straight up villain. I like that. A lot of the stuff they do with the Tusken Raiders is cool, a lot of fun. And like I said, Cad Bane, so awesome. So yeah, I like a lot of stuff here. I like Boba Fett, I like Cad Bane. It's a fun show. 7 stars for me. Very good. Had a lot of fun watching it. I like this. It's a solid show. A lot of fun. All right, so now in 5th place with 7 stars, I have The Mandalorian. So just like I said, I really just, in a lot of ways, just consider The Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian to be like the same show. So I just kind of have them at the same rating. 7 stars, both very good, but Mandalorian just slightly above just because overall those first 2 seasons are really solid, and I put it slightly above. 3rd season, I think, was a huge misstep. Just kind of an aimless, annoying season that didn't go anywhere and just, I don't know, wasn't very interesting to me. You know, it's overall this though still a really good show. Mando is a great protagonist, great main character. Grogu is a great idea. Of course, a stroke of marketing genius, right, to make this show so popular and make Disney a lot of money, right? But also a good character, and they do a lot of cool things with them, and a lot of cool side characters. Queel, and then of course, like Moff Gideon and um, um, you know, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? Grief Karga. You know, great actors there with Giancarlo Esposito and Carl Weathers. I actually got to meet both of them at Fan Expo New Orleans in 2023. Of course, rest in peace to Carl Weathers. Just awesome guy. Brief time I got to meet them. Just such a cool dude, chill guy. I love him. Rest in peace to him. Um, so awesome meeting those two, and they both are phenomenal actors, and they play their characters so well. Both cool characters. I mean, in the third season, I feel like Moff Gideon kind of took a little bit of a nosedive. Just didn't have as much for him to do. They just didn't do anything really interesting with him, and the whole duel at the end just was kind of corny to me. But overall, he's a good character, and Giancarlo Esposito plays him so well. And Grief Karga, Carl Weathers, I mean, dude can play so many different people. He's awesome. Of course, most famously Apollo Creed, right? But he plays so many awesome different characters, and he's great. Chubbs and Happy Gilmore, and he's in The Predator, and so many amazing things. Such an iconic, legendary actor. Both of them are great. A lot of great side characters here. Cool things that happen in the show. Again, very much leaning into the Western genre. So pulling from that Western origin of Star Wars. And it's just a fun show. Fun adventures, kind of the weekly adventure style. A lot of cool things here. And again, Mando's the one who drives it home. He's just a very interesting, likable character. Not my favorite character in all of Star Wars, certainly not, but he's a really solid character. And he's only not, I say certainly not, right? That's only because Star Wars has so many phenomenal characters that he can't compete at the top, but he's a great character. I love following him, and he's a good guy, and he's great, So The Mandalorian's a really fun show. 7 stars from me. Very good show. All right, so now, getting really high up now. In 4th place, I have Tales of the Jedi with 10 stars. Yes, 10 stars. This show is awesome. Such a great idea to have these little tiny shorts that explore these little areas of the Star Wars galaxy, with Count Dooku and Ahsoka Tano, filling kind of some of the gaps of their stories. Just so awesome, especially the Count Dooku story. I love what they do in these 3 episodes with Count Dooku, especially my favorite. I know this is probably not most people's pick, but Justice, the first of the 3 Count Dooku episodes. I love this episode, start to finish. What a great story to show, Count Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn going to this planet on this mission to free the senator's son, when they kind of discover these townspeople. At first, you think, oh, they're kidnappers, but you actually realize they're people who've been oppressed and just kind of left out to rot and die by their complete asshole of a senator. This guy, Senator Dagonet, I believe that's his name. Yeah, Senator Dagonet, if I recall correctly. Right. So Senator Dagonet, he's a total asshole. Just hate this guy. And he just oppresses his people, leaves them out to just, rot with nothing. And, the Jedi discover that, and they actually side with the villagers and defend them. It's such an awesome thing to see, Count Dooku see the corruption happening here, doing the right thing, saying, no, we don't serve the Senate, we serve the people of this republic. He has the right mindset. And it's kind of sad, too, because you realize, oh, my God, Count Dooku used to be a really good person before he fell and became evil, right? So it's sad in that sense, but it's also nice to see that he used to be a good person, and he saw the corruption in the republic long before most people did. And, you see some of his dark side come out, of course, where he starts choking the guy Dagonet, even though he deserved it, even though he totally deserves it, right? He ended up doing the right thing, by, calling off, right, when the fight was over and everything, and hopefully that guy will be, have to pay for his crimes, right, through the justice system of the Republic, hopefully, right? But really, really just a wonderful story just to see this stuff unfold. I love this episode. The music is phenomenal. The stuff that Kevin Kiner and his, what him and his team were able to do here. I'm not sure. I think his children actually work with him too to compose music. I don't know if they did it for this. I'm not sure. But him and his children, whoever worked with him on this, I mean, my God, just hats off. They did such a fantastic job scoring this, especially Soldiers Are Here. This the song that plays while the whole confrontation is happening just sets the tone so well, and it's easily one of my favorite Star Wars themes of all time. Even up there amongst some of the most classic for me. With dual Duel of the Fates and the Imperial March and all these classic awesome themes. And then the Ahsoka story is also really great. I like following her and her journey throughout all of it, and I really like seeing her wipe the floor with his Inquisitor. If I recall correctly, I think a lot of people were complaining about that when it came out, that like this guy was beaten too easily. I actually like the fact that he's beaten easily because that's how it should be. Ahsoka Tano's legions beyond this fool. This guy is just, these Inquisitors are poorly trained jackasses, and they would not be able to stand a chance against Ahsoka. So the fact, unarmed, doesn't matter. Ahsoka wiped the floor with this dude and killed him in like a few seconds, and that's exactly how it should be. So I like that. Ahsoka is someone who's a bit hardened by the Clone Wars and trained by the Jedi, trained by Anakin. After years and years of experience fighting and being in a war and honing her craft with the lightsaber and the Force, it totally makes sense she'd wipe the floor with this guy. So I like that happens so easily. And her journey's great. And also it's great, too, seeing that, like, the training Anakin gives her really ends up helping her out, like, in Order 66. And it's cool seeing her parents and her journey. I would have liked to see that fleshed out a little bit. I felt like that was maybe the only aspect that was really kind of felt incomplete-ish. It would have been cool to see, like, Plo Koon arriving and seeing how that process, happen. And also, how did her parents deal with that? I mean, having your daughter permanently leave to go off to the Jedi Order, I'm sure is not an easy thing. Like, oh, all right, bye. So fleshing that out and how emotional that must have been for her parents and stuff, that could have been fleshed out more. I would have liked to have seen more of that. But overall, and then still, of course, seeing Bail Organa in the 3rd episode working with Ahsoka, awesome. Love Bail Organa. Just so much stuff to love here. And then Count Dooku, Yaddle. So awesome seeing her. Yaddle, not sure which way it is, but she's awesome. Bryce Dallas Howard does a great job of voicing her. She's a really cool character. Love seeing what she does there, and it also explains kind of why she's in the Phantom Menace and then not in later prequel movies and other stuff. So yeah, I mean, just so much love for this, and especially, like I said, Justice. That episode I just love, start to finish. Just a nice message about weeding out corruption and fighting for good and defending people, good people, and so great to see Count Dooku and Qui-Gon there and doing good things to help the villagers, and I love it. So awesome. So 10 stars for Star Wars Tales of the Jedi in 4th place here. I love it. Among some of the best shows I've ever seen. I love it. All right, so now we are on to the top 3. So, in 3rd place, I have Star Wars The Bad Batch. 10 stars. Everything's going to be 10 stars from here on out. This is such a phenomenal show. Not quite as good as the Clone Wars, but such a wonderful masterpiece of a show that really just, again, another family situation like Rebels, where you have this group of clones who, were already kind of like, very different, kind of outcasts, right? But they end up, going out on their own against the Empire. Don't follow Order 66, or, basically force themselves not to, right? Taking the chips out and stuff. And have their own journey. And you have this whole, like, where they kind of figure out how to fend for themselves in the galaxy without the Republic to support them, and learn more about each other and develop personalities, and learn how more to live as not just a soldier, but as a human being, And of course, having Omega, kind of, because they're all siblings, but Omega, since she doesn't have the advanced, like, growing stuff the other clones do, right? She's kind of like their daughter, especially for Hunter. She's like, Hunter's like a father figure to her, and seeing that relationship, him learning how to kind of be like a parent, her finding her role in the Badger, becoming capable as a fighter, but also just living life and actually living beyond just being in a bunch of labs in Camino, or on Camino, right, in the Caminon facility, So just a great story of them, learning how to live life, not just fighting nonstop and that's all you live, actually living life and enjoying the company of, their family and the people around them, just a great message and a great journey to see them, especially the 3rd season really just brings it home, and they end up having a good end, happy ending, which is nice to see that they survive and they get to just kind of live out their life on Pabu, and have, like a real life, which is something most Star Wars characters unfortunately don't get to have, so really cool to see that, at the end, they're all like, together. I mean, most of them, unfortunately, Tech, of course, passes, dies in season 2, and, Echo's still going off doing the fight, and eventually Mega goes off to join the rebellion, but, cool to see them all get to actually relax and kind of live a life on Pabu, I do, not kind of, just, they actually do get to live a life, So I like that. I really like that a lot. And cool moments, of course, along the way. I mean, Crosshair for so long being such an obnoxious guy, so annoying, so despicable, but eventually really finds out, finally, finally, right, that the Empire is evil. And that episode, it's called The Outpost in season 2. Such a phenomenal episode, one of the best in the series for sure, where he finally realizes just how evil the Empire is and kills that asswipe, Lieutenant Nolan. I think that's his name. Kills that guy. Such an awesome moment where Crosser finally realizes how evil the Empire is, and they don't care about him or any of the other clones, or really anyone for that matter. And he kills this guy. This total like asswipe, right? Kills him. Awesome moment. I love that. And I love Cad Bane in season 1. He has a brief kind of moment in season 3, but they don't really do much with him. In season 1, so awesome. Another Western standoff, quick draw contest where, of course, Bane wins once again. He's one of the best at it. He's a legend at it. And he takes out Hunter, which, of course, obviously, I'm rooting for Hunter. Hunter's a good guy. Cad Bane isn't, right? But for the purposes of the show, obviously, it's exciting to see Cad Bane, such a interesting, intriguing villain, and really cool to see him. Badass as always. And Toto 360, voiced by Seth Green there. And, of course, Corey Burton, who voices Dooku. He voices Cad Bane. He does it here. And Cad Bane's presence is awesome. And also just, again, good to see Hunter, so in defense of Omega, wanting to protect her and being, basically her parent, and just, so I like seeing that. And I like seeing Bane being awesome. And so many cool parts of the show. So many great things. And like I said, just the kind of family thing, the Bad Batch being a family is what really just drives it home and makes it so meaningful for me. I love it. 10 stars easily. One of the best shows I've ever seen. And of course, I love Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So of course, for me, all these kind of Star Wars projects are, the best of Star Wars are going to be like my favorite shows and movies. When Star Wars is at its best, that's like, some of my favorite content on Earth. I love it. So this show's awesome. Incredible. So, and it's over now, but I'm glad where they ended it. I'm happy with it, and overall it's just a wonderful show. All right, so now we're down to the top 2, and I imagine most of you know what these 2 shows are. They're both major Star Wars shows. I imagine most of you are familiar with what these are, right? So all that remains now is what order am I going to have them in, right? What's the order here? This is tough, but in the end, I think the number 1 is clear for me. So let's start with number 2. And in second place, I have Star Wars Andor with 10 stars. This is a phenomenal show that blew me away. I had no idea this show would be so good. I even remember Star Wars Dude, who used to be a great guy on Instagram. Unfortunately, he had his page taken down and deleted by Instagram for impersonation of Star Wars or something absurd. I think you can still follow him at True World, something like that. But I remember him saying, talking about how Andor is the show that no one was interested in. It was kind of like the sleeper show that no one was interested in, no one really wanted to see. And he figured there's this whole narrative about it being lame, but it's going to turn out to be awesome. He was spot on. He was totally right. Just like he's a great Star Wars content creator, does all kinds of awesome stuff. He's an awesome dude. And he was able to, call it, right? And he was totally right. This show is incredible. Just such wonderful writing, wonderful characters who are written so well, go on great arcs, very interesting motivations, great exciting stuff still, battles and exciting heists and stuff, and just really getting to see the rebellion built from the ground up. And then ethical dilemmas, getting to see really how the rebellion isn't all just fun and games and stuff Luke Skywalker getting to blow up the Death Star, right? It's not all fun and games. A lot of it's just very difficult, very dangerous, very risky. And it requires a lot of moral dilemmas, no-win scenarios. They always talk about Captain Kirk, in Star Trek, right? Someone who didn't believe in no-win scenarios or didn't want to face them until the Wrath of Khan, right? Where he does face a no-win scenario. I won't spoil anything there for those who haven't seen, right? And he does face a no-win scenario, So here, just like there with Captain Kirk, right? Here you have no-win scenarios with a lot of what Luthen Rael and Saul Guerrero, where they end up having to kind of debate between, as I recall, it's been a bit since I've seen the show, right? But as I recall, right, they have to decide about, a fellow rebel cell, right? The Empire is going to ambush and wipe them out, right? If they know this because they have a mole, this guy, Lonnie, who's a mole in the ISB, who's giving them information, they know through him that they're going to get ambushed. So do they warn those guys and have them not show up, right, and save them. But if they do that, then the Empire's gonna be like, okay, wait a minute, we got a mole. Someone in here's leaking our stuff. Because there's only so many people who know about this, and somehow the rebels found out. So one of us gave up that information, right? So it's a very big kind of decision, right? Because it's like, okay, you want to save these people, but if you do, you jeopardize your mole. So you put them at risk, and then on top of that, all your future efforts, right? The whole idea here is to take down the Empire, which in turn will save people because the Empire is evil and kills people and tortures people all over the galaxy, right? So you have to think about that long-term goal of taking down the Empire and saving lives that way, but you're also like a short-term, what about this rebel cell? Do we want to let them die? And they end up deciding like, yeah, they give up the cell, they don't say anything, and those rebels all get wiped out. It's a no-win scenario. Either way, something bad happens, right? And they keep their mole safe, Lonnie, right? And they keep their long-term goals safe by giving up that rebel cell, And it's wow. I mean, what a difficult decision. A no-win situation, right? There's no right answer, right? Either way, something bad happens. But it's very interesting, very complex, and just great to see that in this show, that there's real consequences and really interesting decision making that these characters are forced to make. We get to see them make these. We get to learn about these characters and see how they tick and see them have to go through and make these difficult decisions. That's very interesting and just very compelling. And just so many great things here and things that just pump me up. Like the whole, the prison with Kino Loy and Cassian Andor, being stuck in this Imperial prison, and Cassian eventually firing up Kino and with Kino firing up everybody else, and eventually like launching a prison break. And man, so emotional. The music and just the energy and the acting all just elevates it to where I'm just enthralled. I'm just so passionate, invested in this story and these people and what they're doing, and invested in their cause and their struggles and their desires, right? And I'm fully invested in it. It's just such an adrenaline rush. Just you feel like you're there with them. That's how good the writing is, how good the story is. You feel like you're with these people going through this and breaking out. And it's such a relief and such like an amazing moment when they get out, and then such a heartbreaking thing when you learn Kino can't swim and he's stuck there. Just the emotions. This show is good because it gets me to care. I care about these characters. I'm invested in them, and the story is meaningful. Has a meaningful story to tell, and interesting political things going on, interesting ethical things going on, interesting character stories and arcs going on, and motivations and characters doing different things and having different lives and problems, and good and bad things. This is all interesting. This makes for an interesting show. And the Aldani heist, so cool. Seeing all the build-up and planning and how specific they had to be on the timing and the execution of this mission to go in. It feels so... you learn about these different characters on this crew doing this, and it's so well developed and so exciting. And, man, it's such, you're on the edge of your seat. You feel nervous for these people going in there, but it's awesome. Just so well done. And then, of course, awesome speeches and stuff. I think particularly of Luthen's speech while he's meeting with Lonnie, somewhere like the underworld of Coruscant, right? Lonnie, I really feel for Lonnie. He seems like such a good guy. He's a father now, a new father, and he lives this whole, anxiety-inducing double life where he's both, he's a rebel, but he's also has to live this life as an ISB agent when he's actually a mole, and he's feeding information to the rebels. So he's literally surrounded by his enemies every day. And, the moment they were to discover, who he actually is and what he's doing, then they would kill him, So walking around every day just wondering, oh, are they going to find out? You're going to get killed. Is your kid going to be fatherless? The amount of stress this man has to live under, and he wants to get out, but of course Luthen tells him he can't. He's already entrenched and he needs him, and there's not really a way to get out, or at least according to Luthen, right? And man, I feel for Lonnie, He's doing a great service to the rebellion. His service is, incredible to making the galaxy a better place, but then you wonder at what cost, what is he doing to himself and his family, I feel so bad for the guy, but again, these things are important for having a good show. These things are developed, and you feel for these characters. So Lonnie, great character. And then Luthen, much more cold and calculated, unattached, but also very effective for the rebellion and building this up and trying to take down the Empire. And he has a whole speech, like Lonnie asks him, like, well, what do you sacrifice? And Luthen delivers an incredible speech about what he sacrifices, and ends by saying, so what do I sacrifice? Everything. Just such a wonderful, such a powerfully delivered speech by Stellan Skarsgård, who plays him. Oh man, such a great actor, does such a great job here in this role. The writing top notch, the acting top notch, just so great all around. This show is a masterpiece. And then Mon Mothma, I don't want to forget to mention her. She's phenomenal. Great. I mean, she's been in Star Wars before. I mean, she's in deleted scenes for Revenge of the Sith. She's in the Clone Wars. She's in Rebels. She's in trying to think. She's in Ahsoka. And then of course she's here, and she's phenomenal. This is easily by far her best like portrayal in any Star Wars project. I mean, this is also really the only time where she's a huge focus, right? But she's wonderful here. Such a great, compelling character. Again, so invested in what she's doing, right? She's living that kind of double life too, where she's, an Imperial senator, but she's also trying to work with the rebellion and Luthen. And she has a very different moral code than Luthen, and wants to do things in a much more, kind of moral way, right? But it's often like it's kind of difficult, right? Because you understand her perspective, wanting to be more moral and compassionate than Luthen is, but at the same time, it's, in some ways, you kind of have to have the Luthen approaching with a rebellion, right? You're faced with these decisions where you can't help everybody, And it's difficult, and it's interesting seeing their different mindsets. They both are against the Empire, but they have very different methods of, trying to fight them. And Mon Mothma wants to do it in a much more classy, kind of like, moral way. And, man, she's just such a great character. Seeing kind of, she's a compassionate, good person, but so torn by her family life and helping the rebellion and being in the Imperial Senate and balancing all these different things and being under a lot of pressure. Just such a really interesting, compelling character and a really good person that's just so interesting to follow, and someone who hasn't, gone down the route of like having to do some bad things, I guess, really to be a part of the rebellion like Luthen has, right? But sometimes is forced in these positions where she has to do some things that she doesn't like, as a part of this cause, right? Part of the situation the various situations she's forced into, So just she's a phenomenal character. And overall, man, this show is just so good, so well done. And I cannot wait for season 2. Season 2 is confirmed. Most of the shows in here, I know I have like a question mark afterwards because a lot of them, it's like we might have a season 2, we might not. Here, season 2 is confirmed. So that's why, there's no question mark. I just have the dash. And I cannot wait. Should be 2025, I believe. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be wonderful. 10 stars for here. And of course, any of these shows, could vary, with new seasons, right? Of course, over time, my thoughts change. I could always change my opinion about things. But especially if a new season gets added, well, that's new content, right? I'm not just reevaluating or rethinking things that I've already seen. This is new stuff, right? So, of course, these shows could go up or down, or stay the same. But I have every confidence this second season is going to be just as fantastic. And I'm sure the show will remain a 10 for me. Cannot wait for season 2. The show is awesome. 10 stars for what we have so far. One of the best shows I've ever seen. So phenomenal. And for Star Wars, it is second only to one. I'm sure you've all guessed it at this point. In number 1, I have Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Number 1 overall, best Star Wars TV show, definitely for sure. And then 10 stars. This is great. I grew up with the show, watching with my brother and my dad, and even my mom's seen some of it, and plenty of my friends have seen it. And it is just a wonderful show. Over 7 seasons, just showcasing all these different cool characters and events and battles and stories throughout the Clone Wars era of like 3 years, And they just do so many awesome things here, so many wonderful stories. And by having this show where it's like you kind of focus not just on one set of characters, but many, we get to have all these little side stories and cool like one-off episodes or like 2, 3, 4 episode arcs, all kinds of cool things. I love some episodes. I love some like one-off episodes like Trespass. Like you can see, I have my figures here from the episode Trespass. So cool with like the towels. Of Tai Sen, the leader of them. And Anakin, Obi-Wan, Captain Rex. Clones. I have them all here. The speeder bikes and all these cool characters and cool things going on. And Rio Chuchi, of course, great character who I'm not sure if this is her first episode. This is certainly her first episode where she has like a role. Could she have been seeing the background of some episode before this? Possibly. But certainly her first prominent role, if not her first role ever in Star Wars. And then, of course, she's in the Clone Wars later, and then she's in the Bad Batch. She's a phenomenal character. Love her. And then, of course, Anakin, Obi-Wan, C-3PO, R2, and, of course, everything with the towels. And just a really great story. A lot of fun. Love the Citadel arc. Citadel is a lot of fun. That was always one of my favorites and still is. Growing up was one of my favorites, still is one of my favorites. And of course, you got Umbara. You got, Siege of Mandalore, which isn't my favorite. I know a lot of people have that as their favorite. It's not my favorite. I do love it. It's not my favorite, though. But it's a great arc. That's just how good the Clone Wars is. A great arc like that is not my favorite because there's so many other good arcs, And so many others I'm not thinking of. Oh, Water War. Love the Water War arc. And tons of other one-off episodes. And then, this actually isn't a one-off, but actually a 3-episode arc in season 1 with like a all the stuff with like Newt Gunray, and eventually culminating in the third and final episode in Grievous's lair with Kit Fisto and Nadar Veb, and their little squad of clones going there to like chase Newt Gunray, but then eventually like are facing Grievous. Trying to trap him and capture him. So awesome. Kit Fisto's so awesome in the Clone Wars to get to flesh him out where, in the movie in Revenge of the Sith, he was lame, just got sliced down by Sidious, and this stupid... Look, I love Revenge of the Sith, but it was really stupid how easily all those Jedi, fell to Sidious. Yes, Sidious is more powerful. Should he have been able to kill them that quickly? No. Stupid. Makes no sense. Sorry. But that's just, my opinion. But, Kit Fisto gets fleshed out here, gets to do some really cool things. In Water War 2, he does some awesome things there. Lair of Grievous, though, I always look back at my favorite Kit Fisto episode. So awesome. Just so many. I just rattled off a bunch. There's countless more. The Clone Wars just has so many great characters, so many great stories. Introduces us to people like Ahsoka Tano, has turned her into one of the best characters in all of Star Wars. You flesh out Anakin and Obi-Wan and do much better with them than especially with Anakin, than in the prequels. I love Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan. I love Hayden Christensen. But they just didn't I feel like some of the writing, was kind of cringy, in the prequels, and there were some problems with what they did. Still love Hayden and Ewan. They're awesome. We get to flesh them out here with Matt Lanner and James Arnold Taylor. They do such a great job with these characters and making them, their story is just much more built up, and you get to see much more of their chemistry and who they are and how they develop over the course of the Clone Wars, and more of them as human beings. And it makes, Anakin's fall more tragic, of course, but it also makes him a much more meaningful character that we know much more about and come to love much more. For Anakin and for Obi-Wan, for all these characters. It's just such a fun show, so well done. Animation, great for its time, even still great today. Obviously, it improves over the course of the show over the years as technology got better. But this looks great, so much fun. I love the narration, the opening, always they have the quotes at the beginning, the kind of philosophical quotes, words of wisdom. Just good life lessons. Great narration by Tom Kane. And of course with Tom Kane, I know now he's dealing with horrible stuff where I know he can I don't know what kind of event happened to him, but I know he can barely speak anymore. I feel so sorry for him. Of course, I'm sending my love and support to him and his family and his whole circle of people. Tom Kane is just a wonderful narrator. He voices Yoda. He voices Admiral Yularen. And he voices, the narrator for Clone Wars. I love his intros. I love him. He just elevates the show so much by doing that and playing his characters. So, of course, sending all my love and support to him and his circle of people, his family, over, what I'm sure is so hard to deal with and so terrible. He's awesome. Again, love and support to him and all of his people. This whole show, just phenomenal. Great voice actors and actresses, great writing, just turning this into a masterpiece that I grew up with. I've watched every episode a million times, and I'm going to watch them a million more. I love the show, always keep coming back to it. It's so great, so much fun, and you can see some here, I got some characters, I got Clone Wars, Obi-Wan, and of course, all kinds of other characters here that, you saw in the beginning of my video and everything, from a bunch of different shows, so I got some awesome figures on both sides here, but plenty of Clone Wars representation here with the figures, as you can see. So that's everything. I know this is insanely long, but as much as I wanted to try and make this video short, I can't. I love Star Wars so much. I have so much to talk about. This is even kind of limiting. I could sit here for 8 hours and talk about this. I love Star Wars. It's so much fun. Make sure my computer doesn't turn off. So thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. That's my list. 11 through 1, and all my ratings as well on my system. Please let me know your thoughts. How would you rank all these 11? What would you, do the same as me? What would you do different? How would you rate them? You can use my system. You can use your own system for rating. I'd love to hear all of y'all's rankings and ratings in the comments below. Please share. I'd love to hear it. Let's just all please keep it respectful, of course. And thank you all so much for watching. I love Star Wars. I'm sure a bunch of you love Star Wars as well. Let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Appreciate you all. Love you all.